Realized by 30, I didn't have the Midas touch. All the money I made from the exit was all gone. I squandered it away. There was no perfection back then. It was literally a little tiny Zoom recorder. Press record, no post-production mixing, and just send it to the world. My entire thesis for life is I don't have anything figured out. I have figured out what I did yesterday, but I'll be damned if I know what I'm going to do tomorrow. And so it's saying, look, it's okay to say you don't have it all figured out. It sounds so cliche, but it's true.
Hey, Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Steve. Looking forward to it.
Now, I met you, my God, going back a while now. Joe Polish, Dave Meltzer. There's been a whole bunch of times that we've kind of like crossed paths and got to chat. It's probably been, I don't know, 5-8 years, something around about that. And then we were chatting, and I got to kind of like do that little stalking thing. And I thought, obviously the guy's successful. Otherwise, let's be blunt, you wouldn't be in the same circles. That's the beautiful thing about when we have those standards, that when we're in that kind of room, we don't have to really question. We know that if they're in that room, they've got to be something. So I did a bit of digging, and wow. Now, I know you're a business consultant. I know you're a serious and serial entrepreneur. I know you're a coach. I know all of that kind of stuff. But then when I look down at it, the acquisition and exit of more than 11 companies surpassed a collective revenue of over $230 million. And in addition, tripled the revenue of over 5 companies in under 2.5 years, adding over $950 million in valuation. Now, those are numbers that people can't relate to. Have you always been that kind of mind that's been able to look into a company and go, you're missing bits?
Absolutely not, Steve. I'd love to say I came out of the womb that way, but I'd be lying, right? I think that we are a combination and culmination of our life experience. So, right, I came through more of a traditional university path of mechanical engineering, right? So that, of course, has end in mind first, right? You start at the finalized state and work backwards, of course, hence the term reverse engineering. That got into sales, where I realized very quickly, I don't enjoy AutoCAD and sitting behind a computer. I like being belly to belly, having conversations. I'm more of an extrovert than an introvert. That eventually led to my first entrepreneurial journey, which was sales for a startup web hosting company that, gosh, I don't know, maybe it was 3 months, maybe it was 5. I ended up taking over as president and CEO. Went through some capital raises, ended up selling it off to a subsidiary of GoDaddy. And that was that first entry point into saying, holy cow, being an employee versus, being an entrepreneur is a much different path. And then I was able to look back and see all the things we didn't do right, or I didn't do right inside that company that we grew and sold. And so I thought, well, gosh, I'm 29 at that point. I have to have the Midas touch, as they say. I realized by 30, I didn't have the Midas touch. All the money I made from the exit was all gone. I squandered it away. Started a high-risk merchant processing company that went belly up. All my doing, not because of the economy, not because of anything else. And so when I say it went belly up, I mean, I had nothing left. It was rental properties in foreclosure, car repossessed, probably negative 40 or 60 grand net worth. That was 9 years ago, right? And so from that point, Steve, just started rebuilding slowly but surely. And starting to pay attention to, the books that are behind me now and individuals that you and I might, know in common, and started to study other people that had found success, right? Under that old premise that success leaves clues. I'm like, I'm 30. I don't have anything figured out. Let me start to be a student of the game instead of saying I'm a master. That led to starting a custom clothing company, right? Actually own part of a textile manufacturing business in Huddersfield, England right now. Really small little piece of it. Grew an app to help shorten the supply chain or the cash conversion cycle inside that business. Used that, sold that off, started a CBD business before people knew what CBD was. Not because I had some brilliant crystal ball, but I could see the trends with digital research online, and people started researching CBD. I'm like, what is this stuff? And figure out how to reverse engineer, taking that to market. Grew that company and sold it to a private equity group in 2018. Sat back, had a podcast in 2018 where I got really tired of all the shame and guilt I was carrying around, Steve, with, failed businesses, infidelity, steroid use, lies, you name something. And so launched a podcast back then called 15 Minutes to Freedom. And it was just like it sounds, daily episode, 15 minutes, me, belly up to a microphone, no sales, no funnel, no anything, just really cathartic. Here's a story. Here's what I messed up. Here's what I'm trying to do to fix it. That led to a consulting business accidentally. I'm about 130 episodes in and put out an offer and said, hey, if anything I've shared could help you, just send me an email. Right? I mean, podcasting, you don't get a whole lot of feedback. It's kind of, a couple of reviews here and there. Steve, 2 days later, I had 13, 14, 1,500 emails in my email box. No company structure, no sales funnel, no process, no team. It's okay, there's something here. There's something here to learn. And so that then eventually led into the consulting, which led into helping more than a handful of people exit, but not because I'm some M&A specialist, because I'd really sold 3 companies, and I could tell a small market business owner, here's all the things I would have done differently. Here's all the things you shouldn't do that I didn't know until I've had a couple of bats. And so the majority of the knowledge I have now is based off of either studying somebody else, certainly applying it, but ultimately looking back over my life and saying, what are all the things I messed up? And if I had another at bat, how would I not do it again? That's how we're here.
Hey, I'm sorry for interrupting this podcast. I know it's a brilliant one, but I wanted to talk to you about your room, your connections. Now, we know full well that great things come from great connections and great rooms. Now, if you're in a room full of people that will challenge you, inspire you, motivate you, and support you, then great. But if not, then maybe I have the solution for you. Head on over to stevedsims.com, look up Sims Distillery there, and join our community of creative disruptors, those that are only not there to help you and motivate and actually give you information, but to support and answer questions. We very much vet the room to make sure that we support each other's growth. We all want each other to grow. So if you want to be in the right room, head on over to stevedsims.com/Sims Distillery, and I'll see you inside my room. Enjoy the rest of the show. There's a lot to break down here. I've got a fly running around in the studio, so I apologize for that. A couple of the things that I want to hook on. One of them, you said that you recognized early on that the path of an employee and an entrepreneur was so different. You recognize that. Now, there's a lot of employees out there that actually look at being an entrepreneur as the world of roses. And they look at it. But what I also want to pick on is, and we know that that's wrong, you said you carried around a lot of shame and guilt. Yet what you've spoken about and what you've listed off has been a common journey of pretty much every entrepreneur. And that's been pretty tight. We, as an entrepreneur, we're searchers. We want to know what's going on. We want to know how it can be better. We try so many things. We are serial failures. We're constantly trying to do things and it ain't working. But that's where we learn and that's where we grow. My concern is that had you actually got that shame and guilt and gone, shit, I'm carrying it. I'm going to let it push me down. I'm not going to step out. You took the other route. You went, I'm going to own it. I'm going to expose it. And you can proudly, to a point, and I want to be very careful how I say that, you want to be able to say, hey, this was me. This was what I went through. It doesn't define me. It refines me. What was the reaction you got when you actually decided, hey, I'm going to start exposing me and the kind of like rough route that I took to get to where I am now? Because a lot of people are going to look at you, well-defined, sharp, articulate. We were talking about our mutual friend, Jay Abraham, just before this, well-dressed. You're not negative 40 grand anymore. I know that for a fact. And they're going to look at you and go, oh, I want to be, but they're scared of that horrible, dark, bumpy, pitfall road that you went through that quite so many people did. What was the response when you started revealing yourself?
Steve, that's a really good question. The response was really polarizing, right? The people that were closest to me, family, close friends, kind of that inner sanctum, they pushed back really aggressively. Many of them turned their back and said, we don't know what you're doing. We're not comfortable with it. When my whole journey was my journey, I wasn't sharing somebody else's, I'll say, dirty laundry, perhaps. I was sharing, this is what I had done that had I been able to go back in time, I might have done differently. Nothing to do with somebody else, but we look at the entire inner circle. Again, my family at that point, girlfriend's family, extended friends. Steve, they said, we don't want anything to do with you. And so it made the hole deeper for a second. It was saying, okay, now I really feel alone. Not only do I have the shame and guilt, not only am I trying to process through it, but now I feel like I'm doing it alone. Not very long after that, though, I started getting a little bit of that feedback from the external world, right? With, talking about, we'll say, failing at a business, perhaps, or, a failed startup attempt. And that episode would launch. And then, you get a series of emails or, maybe social media comments of just, I thought I was the only one. Thanks for having the courage to share it. And it were those little tiny micro bite-sized chunks of really dopamine at this point of saying, okay, I'm going to keep going. Because there were plenty of times where I didn't want to, right? Just, it didn't make sense. Again, with not having a sales funnel, this wasn't for a lead generation. Like looking at it now, right? A podcast is in theory lead gen. It's a great way to connect with brilliant people. It's a whole different thing that I would encourage any entrepreneur to consider doing. But at that point, it wasn't that at all. 2018, the podcast world was different than it is in 2023, right? So it was just sharing over and over and over again. And man, there's some challenging stuff. I actually was looking at it. It's been so long. I was with a gentleman in Salt Lake City, where one of the businesses that I'm partners in, just this past weekend. And he's kind of walking through his own season of life where he feels called and compelled to something greater and says, I have all these stories and I'm afraid things aren't going to go the right way. I said, look, I can't tell you got to share your message, but here's my podcast. Maybe find something there. I felt the same way, and I think it's pretty common. And I scrolled back to the very first episode. I think there's 560 episodes on there. And it's I had lost my best friend at that moment to an accidental overdose on fentanyl. Right. And there's the emotion, there's the tears, there's the sobbing, and it's real. It's not for effect. It was the only way I could process what I was going through was sit in this little office, nobody in there, press record on a little tiny mixer and figure out how to post it. Right. There was no AI back then. Like all the things that, to me, especially as entrepreneurs now, that perfection being the enemy of process or progress. There was no perfection back then. It was literally a little tiny Zoom recorder. Press record, no post-production mixing, and just send it to the world. And those things are impactful. Those things are the way to go to me. So I think if you're listening to our conversation, whereas it's the old cliche, it gets darkest before the dawn. And it did, but it wasn't for anybody else. That I think is a difference. It wasn't I wasn't seeking validation. I was just tired of carrying around all the damn messes in my head and needed to get it out.
Have you written a book on this? Because the downside, I don't know why I went in with the negativity, is entrepreneurism is tough. And everyone looks at the shiny suits, the big cars, the big house, and goes, my God, I want a piece of that. But they're not prepared for the shit. You had a lot of people turn your back on you. You had a lot of people walk away. The first thing you had to do, and I'm putting words in your mouth here, so please argue with me, was redefine the community that you could connect with. You got yourself into a room, because I've seen it because I'm in your rooms, where people have also been through I lost money here, this went tits up, my business failed here. My God, I went bankrupt 3 years, now I own 10 jets. We've all seen those stories and we kind of rejoice them. We're in a world now where we'll be in a room, and if someone sits in front of you at a table and goes, yeah, I was bankrupt 2 years ago, by the way, I just bought an island. You're like, yeah, good on you. And if the guy next to you is bankrupt, but hasn't yet bought the island, he's the smart guy because he's in the right room. Mm-hmm. But so many people are frightened of that. Now you did the podcast. Have you put this in a book?
So, Steve, I remember the first time I came across you, I think even before we met, it was when you had just launched bluefishing.
Oh, dear.
Right. I mean, and it was, I poured over the book, and that inspired me to start, I'll say, a manuscript way back. I say way back then, like it's a lifetime ago. It feels like a lifetime ago to me. And I haven't written a book to actually launch and take to market. Right. So I've got fractionalized amounts of a few different manuscripts, everything from this kind of hero's journey version of what it is to be an entrepreneur, all the way into a tactical field guide. And, I come into businesses now that are $3 to $5 million a year in revenue. I've got a pretty decent track record of getting them to 50 to 75 million and not diluting the equity pool, right? Not taking on a bunch of debt, not running the VC route. And I can't say it's going to work for everybody, but it's that old conversation that success leaves clues, right? It's right. I love the fact you're a motorcycle rider, right? You're on a track if you've went around the same track a few hundred times, you start to get pretty familiar with the corners. You know where you can put your knee down. You know where you can lean in. With a novice like me, I can't keep up with you. But if I follow right behind you, my lap times are probably going to be a little better than if I went out solo, because I can follow the path that's blazed in front of me. And I think so much to me on our entrepreneurial journey is that paying it forward almost. I think it's our responsibility, not even as entrepreneurs, but as human beings, to focus on leaving people better than we found them. And that's not some, Mother Teresa type thing. That's literally saying, I've learned all the stuff I've learned. And if I sit in front of you and I can give you just a little piece of something with nothing in return, the world just keeps getting better. Right? I think there's so much right now if everybody's got their hand out of what's in it for me versus what's in it for me is the feedback. It's like, here, try this thing. Let me know if it worked or not. I don't need anything for it. I don't want part of your company. I'm not saying it's going to work. Just freaking give this a shot. That sort of stuff matters.
I saw something. It was, I think, about a week ago, and it stayed with me. I saw a clip, and I can't even tell you on what platform I saw it on, and it was Quentin Tarantino. Now, guy's smart, he's diverse, he's wild, he's wacky, he's off the box. And I saw him and he turned around and he said that in his world, if you were to race against someone that wasn't very good, you'd win. Every single time you would win. If you were to race against someone that was really good at it, you'd lose every single time. But your times would be faster. Your style would be faster. You would become better. Even though you're losing against the person you're trying to follow, you become better. And that's the room you're saying about putting information out there. And I've seen the information you put out there. In fact, I'm gonna stop here and anchor people. Where do people need to follow you? And then I'll go into why that's important. Where do people need to follow you?
Yeah, so it's Ryan Niddel on every platform, RyanNiddel on every platform. And then if you happen to go to ryanniddel.com, you'll actually see the brilliant Steve Sims business's work behind the scenes. I reached out to you and your team quite some time ago to redesign the website so it spoke to the right tribe in the right way. And your team did a phenomenal job on it. So I can't to plug you right back in reverse. Couldn't be more appreciative of that.
Well, thank you very much. But I wanted people to know where they could follow you because you give a lot of information, style, attitude, tone that people can benefit from. And you're definitely not one of the gurus. You're not out there trying to grab the like machine, but you do seriously care about people doing better for themselves. Why do people see that without a CTA as a weakness? Everyone says these things, but it's all like, hey, you should do it, but grab this. You're not like that. You genuinely care about people becoming better. And I'm going to ask you directly, did that come from your past?
Oh, yeah, Steve, I think I'd be kidding myself and you and anybody listening if I shared anything different than that, right? I still look at what I share as overcoming a weakness or vulnerability. I'm still solving for something that's an impartial piece of me from earlier, right? I'm not seeking the validation of the like machine. What I am saying is, gosh, back then, had there been more breadcrumbs for me to follow, more pieces and parts, maybe I would have been further ahead, maybe not, right? I look at so much of what we share as just turning around and sharing it to a previous version of ourselves, right? And can I shorten down that time over and over again? And if I can, then I'm doing the right thing. If I'm putting my ego first and saying, gosh, I need adulation, I need likes, I need to be on a stage somewhere, I can't disparage someone that's doing that because I can see value, right? You get your message out in front of more people. You and I are friends with people that have incredible events and host incredible opportunities for us to come together and spend time with one another. And so I'm grateful for that. But I think that the shiny object syndrome of saying I have to be the biggest or brightest star in the room and, oh, look at me because I've got it all figured out. My entire thesis for life is I don't have anything figured out. I have figured out what I did yesterday, but I'll be damned if I know what I'm going to do tomorrow, right? Like there's new information coming all the time. I mean, you can go back to COVID, you can go to AI right now. Like the people that say they have it all figured out and they know exactly what you should be doing, in my opinion, unless you're on the exact same path they're on, you just got to distill the nuggets down. You got to take those little tiny pieces that can be applied to your life. I encourage everybody to pay attention to the false prophets, right? There's plenty of false prophets out there that profess to know everything all the time, and this is the only path to success. I think there's a bunch of damn paths to success, right? I think there's a lot of different ways to get there. Sure, there's some commonalities, right? I think you should focus on something. I think there should be some direction you're focused on achieving. I think you should surround yourself with brilliant people that have done more than you. Sometimes you don't have the cash to get in a room like that, right? So can you reach out to somebody and offer to be an apprentice, a mentor, solve a problem for them for free? Can you do something to add value to the world? Where I think so much right now, Steve, the world's turned into a bunch of consumers. We're takers versus givers. I think that's a slippery slope overall.
It's a scary one. You've repeated through this, and it's worth repeating all the way through for the rest of the show. The success leaves breadcrumbs. You've got books behind you. You've said you make sure you're in the right rooms. What crumbs are you following now? What's next for Ryan?
It's a really good question. So, right, I'm consistently searching for people that are further down the road than I am, and just again, so I can learn from them. And I'm very open with that. Right, I'm looking to use you in a certain capacity, and if I'm willing to invest in the utilization. But right, as I look at things without, I'll say, name dropping, it's actually the most profound man in my life right now is someone that I don't know the world would even know. Right, I own a business in Salt Lake City, very, very brief story, and was with the first self-made billionaire that I'd ever been around. Right, started a company from scratch, grew it. Exited it, kept a small piece, and then exited again, right? Worth more than $1 billion, owned it for 35 years, no partners, no leverage on his books, like just ran it all the way through. And I'm sitting down with him at dinner with, at that point, my CFO, and say, if you could share with me any piece of advice, he's about 65, I'm 39, then I was 38, what would it be? He goes, well, are you part of YPO? I said, no, what's YPO? Just naive as could be. He shares with me what YPO is. He goes, I think you should join it. Your company makes the right size. Right in front of him, pull out my phone, submit an application to YPO. Get back together a couple months later, another dinner. Said, thank you so much. That was a great piece of advice. What else would he give me? Right, I'm here in front of you. What else would he tell me now at 39? He said, well, I found this guy about 15 years ago and completely changed the course of my business. His name was Paul. And Paul had done X, Y, Z, and now he sits on the board of my company and does all these things. And I wouldn't be where I'm at without Paul. Without missing a beat, I said, can I have Paul's phone number? He said, I've told 15 or 20 people that story, and no one's ever had the gumption to ask me for his phone number. I said, well, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm not like other people. It just made sense to me to ask. He said, sure, hold on. Let me text him, make sure he's okay with it. He texts him, and come to find out, Paul's had some really big exits on some companies that take the 7-Eleven Slurpee machine. His family designed that, patented that, sold that off, an ice machine inside of a hotel. They've done the same thing with that. Like his family has done, and he's done those sort of things over his life. And so I'm looking at the fact of he retired the first time at 38. I'm 39, I still haven't retired yet. I could probably listen to him and get a few pieces of advice. And so it's those sort of things of looking at those individuals that, to me, nothing wrong with the internet gurus. Again, I find value in people that are sharing that information. But he couldn't be further off that grid. I don't even know if he's got a social presence anywhere. And I think so much when I look at that, when I look at the Stephen Schwartzmans of the world, maybe the Ray Dalios of the world, some people that certainly there's a presence, but they're changing the fabric of society in their own way. And so running it through my own filter now of what do I ultimately want to do? I'd like to change the fabric of society myself over a period of time. And so why not find associations with those type of people? Why not ask how I can add value to their life? And so those are the breadcrumbs now that I'm following, while simultaneously then turning into my own message. And I look at I call it the ladder principle. I'm grabbing the next rung of the ladder every time. I'm never satisfied on the rung I'm on now. But simultaneously, I've got that arm reaching down, trying to lift somebody up to their next rung, which just makes it so we all climb a little bit further faster.
So you're looking for those breadcrumbs, you're associating with the right kind of people, you're asking questions. Isn't it funny that in a world where we can communicate and connect with people in a far stronger, more direct way than we ever could before? You think about the amount of ways we can connect with someone today, and you go back to, like, you and I are both older than Google. So, we go back into a time where if we wanted to contact someone, knock on their door, send them a letter or phone them up, or when technology hit us, send them a fax. Now we've got millions of ways that we can connect with people, and we're more disconnected than ever. You were the person that actually turned around and went, hey, that Paul sounds absolutely fantastic. What's his number? And this shocked the guy that you were with. Why is it we're frightened of actually asking for that number? Why are we frightened of asking for help?
I certainly don't know if I have the qualification to state it, but I can say from my opinion, I think our egos are becoming more and more fragile as we look at what social media has done to us, right? I think there's this vantage point that we look through that people think we have to have it all figured out because it's the highlight reel online. And to have to ask somebody for help or ask somebody for a contact or ask somebody for a connection, inherently that implies you don't have it all figured out. And when your entire life is built around that like machine, as you so eloquently stated, you have to me, recalibrate your mind into saying like, that's a movie, if you will. Like that's a play that we're putting on for the general populace. But you only see the best parts of a TV show. You only see the best parts of a movie. You don't see all the outtakes. You don't see all the hard work that went into it. That's not on the silver screen. But it still took a year to make a movie, if not 2 years, 3 years, however long it would take. And so it's saying, look, it's okay to say you don't have it all figured out. It sounds so cliche, but it's true. I mean, to me, the most brilliant people I get the pleasure of spending time with all openly say, I don't really have it all figured out. Here's my zone of genius. Here's what I've done before. Here's what I'm doing now that works. But if you have something that I don't know how to do, I'm just going to ask you a damn question. I'm going to ask you for the insight. And in my opinion, the right type of person loves to share that, right? It's not a zero-sum total game entrepreneurism. For me to win, you don't have to lose. If we're both winning, in theory, we win bigger, larger, make a bigger impact. And I think that's also a change. You look at, again, maybe social media, maybe it's just the time of the world as a whole. There is a lot of zero-sum total games that people think that need to be played. I don't adhere to that. I think that a high tide raises all ships. If I can help you win, I don't have to look for something in return. I just have this innate sense that I will eventually win as well. And that's not the reason to do it, but I don't have to have an exchange in that moment.
I remember chatting with one of my pivot connections, as I like to look at them, those stepping stone conversations that had me leave the table thinking differently. And I remember speaking to a guy that, and we've all met these people that we go, oh my God, you've got everything. You've got all your shit together, only to have that conversation that they're like, not really. I've got this together, but that's a shit show over there that I'm still working out. And I remember speaking to one guy who, from the outside, I was like, you're everything I want to be when I grow up. And he turned around to me and I asked him one of his valuable lessons, trying to find out, connections, money, stock exchange, crypto, the shortcut that we all look for. And he turned around and he just simply said, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Now, I've heard that so many times that if you're willing to take that rocky sea, if you're willing to take that awkward moment, if you're willing to take that, that refusal, that being denied, that awkward question, if you're willing to take that chance, you win more times than you lose. And it still makes me giggle where people aren't willing to do that. Now, you said before you're 39 years old. You're 39, correct?
That's correct.
You got kids?
I do. 13-year-old daughter.
So they're in a world where they've not seen anything other than the digital world. They've not seen the time to hustle. They've not seen that knocking on door. They've not seen that sales requirement because everything's already there. We're in a consumptive world. I would say that today, and of course I got 3 kids, I would say today, raising kids, I want to say it's tougher than any other time in the planet. Hey, I'm sure the next generation will go, oh my God, you had easy. But how do you communicate with your kids the need to have those conversations rather than just consume the YouTube?
Yes, Steve. I mean, inside of our house, it's a conversation around putting down our phone and actually being the example. Right? I think that so much of what happens in the world is just a reflection of what happens in the 4 walls of our homes. And so are we having those difficult conversations? Are we having the direct conversations? Am I showing her what it means to go, I'll say, belly to belly with someone, or to make phone calls, or to, I'd love to say I've got it all figured out, that by 5 o'clock, my phone goes off. I don't check any email again. Shit, most nights I come home, I have dinner, and my phone's rang 35 times. There's emails. I can hear all the notifications. I spend a bunch of time with family. And then it's, well, hold on a second. I have other stuff to do. And she's seeing that back and forth. And I'm like, for the life that I want to live and the impact I want to make, There's a trade-off. And anybody tells you something different, I think they're full of shit. I just do. There is a trade-off until there's not. But I love what I'm doing enough that it's a driver. And so I can be 100% present where I'm at while simultaneously moving where I'm at multiple times in a short period of time. And so I was involved in a conversation this past weekend that really shifted my perspective. And political beliefs aside, right? Not pushing any side of the aisle or any agenda here, but having the belief that at some point we need men to be men and to stand up and show what the example is. And a man is a man to me. We can have a whole nother conversation on that, I'm sure, at another time. And no different than a woman's a woman, right? We have chromosomes that decide some of that for us. And you can identify whatever you want to. But at the end of the day, the more that a man can stand up and lead, right? Look at the animal kingdom, right? If the king doesn't rise, the kingdom dies. It's true. It's a truism for as long as society's been tracked, and all the way through the animal kingdom. I mean, if a lion has 12 cubs, the odds of all 12 cubs living are about 0. It's about 1 out of every 12. However, if the main lion leaves and leaves the pride unattended, the odds are 0. Somebody's waiting. Another predator is waiting to eat the young, and saying, okay, hold on a second. As a man in today's society, there's more responsibility than going out and just making money. There's more responsibility than, pouring into other entrepreneurs. There's responsibility to show up as a parent and a father. And a father is not just the 4 walls of our house. While it starts there, you're out in society and there's a child that needs something, you better step up and do it, especially as a man. Pouring into those individuals so that they can have the example of what it means to be that type of person, where I think that's one of the things, Steve, in the previous generation, maybe versus now, there's a lot of people that are afraid to stand up and say the right thing and do the right thing. There's a lot of burying your head in the sand. And who am I to say what the right thing is, right? But our internal moral compass starts to decide what some of those things are. And so what has changed that has us biting our tongue? Why is that? And how can I help our daughter not do that? Feel comfortable in herself enough that when she sees something that she doesn't believe is right, to lend a helping hand, to try to seek some information before seeking judgment. I think that's an incredibly impactful thing that if we don't recalibrate that pretty quickly, that next generation is going to have a really challenging time in adulthood.
I think people need to just replay that last moment, because while there's been a lot of nuggets in here, there's a lot of the worry that I have contained in the last few minutes that you've just said what you've said. A lot of people are frightened to stand up. Now, you had to preface, you had to defend your conversation before you had it. You had to declare, hey, I've got no agenda. You had to defend it all. And it's kind of fucked up that we have to do that, isn't it? It's a case of, hey, I don't want to offend anyone before we fuck someone if you offend them. If you've got something to say, you should feel comfortable enough to be able to say it. But as you say, we're biting our lips. So those people that aren't biting their lips are the people that are now spouting stupidity. And they're becoming really loud. And the world is now consumed with a lot of just bollocks that is going out there. And people are like, well, I want to say something, but I'm scared to say it. And if we don't stand up, now I don't care if what you say is right, wrong, ignorant, misguided, stupid, until you say it and someone else can go, either, yes, I agree with you, or no, I don't agree with you, or well, hang on a minute, you say that, have you considered that? Until we're willing to have that conversation, stupidity is going to win. And that's a shame. We say that we want to have safe places in order to have a conversation. We didn't have safe places in the past. And I'm not romanticizing it and going, oh, we were better then. If I said something that was stupid, I got a punch in the nose. Mm-hmm. Now we can go online, look at someone wearing an outfit. We can go, well, you look fat. Come off our phone and go about our day, ignorant to the fact that we've upset somebody. And I think today the world of communication is dying. And for both of us that have kids, we've got to actually dare them to get up and speak in order to have a conversation.
I completely agree, Steve. I mean, I look at it, it's seek to understand before seek to be understood. So I'm okay with saying, I believe this. I believe that a man is a man biologically. I believe a woman's a woman biologically. I am open to the conversation in a way that is constructive to gain another vantage point, even if it doesn't change my perspective. I can hear someone sharing something different. When the ignorance takes over and the ego takes over, and it becomes my job to convince you that my way is right, which then means your way is wrong, you shut off all ability to process new information scientifically. So what happens when you state and you profess, I believe X, but I'm willing to listen? I'm not going to say I'm agree, but I'm willing to listen. There's too many people, like you said, spouting their ignorance, spouting that they know what it is and being the loudest voice in the room and not considering another possibility. Now, again, I don't know if it's right or not. I know what my right is. It's okay if you believe something different. I can still get along with you. We can still have a friendship. Doesn't bother me at all. But that polarization of, again, that zero-sum total game is really fascinating to me on both sides of the political spectrum, right? The far left and the far right both do it. Our way is right, so everybody else's way is wrong. That's utter bullshit. We're never going to get anywhere like that. That is not, to me, that just doesn't work at scale. And I think we're seeing that right now across the board.
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see the next few years to see where it comes out. You know, time always reveals all. And I'm wondering what the next couple of years are going to tell us and teach us and go, well, that was a really smart growth period, or, well, that was the period of nuggets. You know, I don't know what's going to happen. We'll have this conversation. Maybe we'll come back on a podcast in 2 years' time and go, well, there you go. That was funny. But who knows? All right, so as we wrap out, again, I want people to be able to follow you because you're one of my favorite people. How do people do that?
Yeah, Steve, so thanks. It's just Ryan Niddel, RyanNiddel, any social media platform. The website's RyanNiddel.com. I don't think there's anything I'm selling. There's no where I'm hawking. There's just some things that I can do to add value. And feel free to reach out. If there's something I can do to pour in more, I'd be happy to do so.
Because he likes having a conversation. He's already said it. Ryan, thank you very much for being on the show. Appreciate you, pal.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Well, that was another episode of the Art of Making Things Happen podcast with me, your host, Steve Sims. If you like it, you know the scoop. Subscribe, tell your friends, share it around. Let them get benefit from this juice. And of course, if you want to change the room you're in, join Sims Distillery. Jump over to stevedsims.com/Sims Distillery, or you can find a link directly from that website. That's the room where creative disruptors get together to actually help each other become better. If you've got standards or you want higher standards, join the right room. See you next time.